What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Oscar's Cozy Corner. Now, I know that Halloween was just a couple of days ago, but the Haunted Mansion is for life. And for today's video, I've got a fun little build for you up in the Forgotten Lands using the new Haunted Mansion house skin that we got for the one in Walt Disney World, not the one in Disneyland. I was looking for the perfect place to fit this in because this is a gigantic house skin. It is absolutely huge. And I found this little spot up in the corner of my Forgotten Lands alongside the Gothic Manor build that I did a couple of weeks ago that actually turned out to be absolutely perfect for it. Now, I love the Haunted Mansion. I am a Haunted Mansion fan. I'm a fan of the attraction in Walt Disney World, and this build is actually inspired by that concept. It's inspired by the attraction queue. We did get the queue set in the premium shop this week as a bundle alongside the Haunted Mansion skin. So I'm using a couple of those elements. We're going to create our own attraction queue line. I did actually make a similar video to this about a year ago where I did a Haunted Mansion attraction queue. So I'll put that up in the top right corner somewhere around there so you can take a look if you like. Maybe compare them both. But this time we actually have some physical pieces from the parks to bring into that build, which is going to make it feel much more immersive. It is a slightly different approach to the build today. I've not done a long play for this one. I've done kind of a speed build, but it's in sort of a stop motion style, so you'll see what I mean. I'll let it play through. We will take a look at the build, how I put it all together. You can follow along, pause this one if you want to build alongside me, and then I'll give you a little tour at the end, as always. But let's just get straight into it. Just before I get into the actual walking tour of this area, I did just want to give you an overview of my Forgotten Lands from sort of a bird's eye view at this point. I have been working really hard on my Forgotten Lands. You did see the Gothic Manor build. That is up on my channel if you want to take a look at that. Very structured, very formal. And you might think it's a little bit strange to put two houses next to each other, especially such big manor houses or mansions, but I actually think this really works up here in the Forgotten Lands. I feel like it almost feels like a residential space, which is not something you really go for in Disney Dreamlight Valley, but I think together they look pretty cool. I think it's really heavily decorated. I don't often do heavily decorated biomes. My plaza is the main one that is sort of like really heavily decorated, but otherwise most of my areas are kind of like barren wasteland. However, this has really come together nicely. I think the foliage works. I love the through line. I know that it's not identical to the Walt Disney World Haunted Mansion queue. That's not the point. I was never going to be able to do that. But I do think that the color story, all of the elements, the spooky vibes, it all ties together pretty nicely. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. Just taking a quick overview of the actual queue line. I always wanted it to split a little bit, so it felt like an entrance and an exit, and you can only go one way in and one way out unless you turn around on yourself. We've got a bunch of the queue elements just to bring it to life and really make it feel like the Haunted Mansion. We've got some tombstones over here. We've got the horseless carriage, which is actually what you see when you walk into the ride queue when you actually enter in Walt Disney World. So I wanted to make it in its own little section. The rest of it, I've taken a little bit of creative license just with it because I cannot make it identical, but that's okay. We've got the musical mausoleum just over here, and then we've got the entrance actually up to the Haunted Mansion, which I think looks pretty cool. So I think it looks even cooler from my avatar's point of view. So let's take a look at that. So this little parcel of land where I have my well and the route down to the Sunlit Plateau is actually the last undecorated part of my Forgotten Lands. I will come up with something to put here, maybe something parks related. It's only small, so I'll get away with doing a nice little build, maybe some foliage and some benches. But as we enter this queue, if you will, this attraction queue, I've used the wrought iron Mickey just to make it feel like it has a bit of a sense of grandeur. We don't have a great deal of these archways unless you're using one of the wall kits. But I've split it straight away with one of the inauguration ribbons just so there is one way in, one way out. And then I also have this little foliage section. They do have something like this in the queue line as soon as you walk in. So they've got the queue that actually splits around that, and theirs is a little bit more grand, theirs is a little bit more put together, but you have to work with the foliage that you've got in the game. And then you also walk towards this horseless kind of like ghost carriage, which I think is so cool. I took a picture of this myself when I was actually at Walt Disney World because I just think it looks great in person and I wanted to replicate it in my game. So I think that works really, really well. You can walk around this. I have left myself a little bit of a gap in the fencing just so I can get to those mining nodes a little bit easier, but you can walk all the way around. We hit some of the raised gravestones, which are really, really cool. They don't have any inscriptions on them or anything like that. They do in the parks, I believe, but for these ones, they've just left them blank. I haven't actually tested fishing from this spot yet, so I'm not going to do it while I'm recording just in case it doesn't work, but we'll just go with the fact that I can still fish. And then I've placed another couple of tombstones around here. I've used the Madame Leota one, and I have used the Zero one. I know that Zero isn't from the Haunted Mansion, but I needed some extra tombstones in this space, so that's what I went with. But I think it just feels kind of like a really fun little queue. It definitely feels not claustrophobic, but it feels contained, which is what I was going for. And then as you round that corner, you start to get a glimpse of the Haunted Mansion building itself, which I think is pretty cool. Again, I've left a little gap here just so I can make it through and mine when I need to do stuff for the Star Path, etc., etc. And I've also lined everything with these brick and iron fences and the topiaries because I just think that it makes it feel a little bit more alive. It gives it a little bit more life. So I'm really happy with that. I do like that it's kind of a non-uniform little graveyard as well. I was thinking about having it very structured, but I actually think having it a little bit more wild with the overgrown grass just adds to the spooky element, or at least the ancient element of it. And then as you round this corner, we've got the musical mausoleum, which we do have in the parks. You walk around that slightly differently in the queue, but I think it's pretty close. And then you come up towards the actual Haunted Mansion itself. Again, we've got another one of those little foliage sections where the queue kind of like splits around it, which I think is very pretty, if you ask me. And then, of course, we've got that gigantic house skin where you walk up to it. I have covered up those potted plants because I do not think the tropical potted plants fit the aesthetic of that house whatsoever. So I have covered them up. I've covered them up with a little shrub, some of the grass, and then I've put some of the cypress trees either side just to make it feel a little bit more formal. And I think it works. You can't see those blue pots or kind of like the purple pink stems coming out of them. So I'm happy with that. Looking over to the right-hand side, you can see the conservatory, but you can't actually get a great glimpse of the Gothic Manor, which is fine because I kind of wanted them to feel like separate areas. I can get to the both of them easily. There's a little sliver of land that I can run down, but if you were kind of visiting, you wouldn't really be able to tell. And then I've done a little freshly dug grave for Zero or for one of the other critters. I need to assign someone to this, so let me know who I should assign to this grave, and we can do that. And then heading back down the path, this is kind of the exit. Again, those grasses just making it feel a little bit more wild. I know they're a different color. I do kind of wish that they would adapt to the biome that they were in. That would be really cool, but I understand that they are specific grasses in the furniture menu. Coming back around to this carriage without the horse and then walking towards the exit, back past the inauguration ribbon, and you're out after having ridden the ride. So I think at some point, maybe I'll do an indoor version of the Haunted Mansion. It's not going to be accurate to the attraction, but I'm just going to do some sort of like spooky indoor, maybe ghost house type build. I think that could be fun. And then maybe one day if I get a fully decorated valley, I can open it up and people can come in and see everything that's going on. But that's it for the little tour. All right, gang, that is it for this video. I do hope that you enjoyed that kind of like little stop motion build that we did today and the tour around with some commentary over the top, just explaining some of my choices. Like I said at the top of the video, the Haunted Mansion is one of my favorite rides at Walt Disney World. It's also got some great lore to it. I just really enjoy it as an attraction, and I really wanted to replicate that in my valley, just like I tried to do last year when I did the build for the first time. If you did enjoy this video, let me know down in the comments below. I'm always eager to hear what you think. I know this wasn't a long play. Many of you have said that you like those long plays. I am working on a couple of more. They are in progress. So if you like those 3-4 hour videos, keep an eye out for those. There's a few more on the way. As always, if you like this video, feel free to give it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I would love to have you with us in our little cozy corner of the internet, but I am going to leave it there for today because I will catch you in the next one, and I will, of course, see you in the valley.